Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of you wonderful listeners. We are so excited to have you with us today on this special podcast. Whether you're tuning in during your morning coffee, on your way to work, or relaxing at home, we're here to help you improve your English skills. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's exciting topic.
Yes, welcome everyone. It's great to have you with us today. We're thrilled to be talking to all of you who are learning English, especially if you're at an elementary or intermediate level. This podcast is all about helping you improve your language skills and make your English more fluent. And today, we have a very special topic to talk about.
That's right, Jasper. So, what are we going to talk about today? What's the big topic that we have prepared for our listeners?
Well, Agnes, today we are going to explore something that I believe will truly help a lot of people improve their English speaking skills. The topic is improving listening for fluency in your English speaking.
Oh, I love this topic. It's so important. You know, a lot of learners focus a lot on speaking or writing, but they often forget just how important listening is when it comes to becoming fluent in any language, especially English. Listening helps you understand the natural rhythm, pronunciation, and even the subtle nuances of how native speakers communicate. It's actually the key to speaking more naturally and confidently.
Absolutely, and that's why we wanted to talk about this today. Because fluency in English isn't just about knowing the words or grammar, it's about using those words in real-life situations. And to do that, you need to be able to understand what people are saying quickly and naturally, without having to stop and think too much. The better your listening skills are, the more fluent your speaking becomes.
And I think what makes this topic even more exciting is that improving your listening doesn't have to be boring. There are so many fun ways to practice listening skills, and you don't need to spend hours every day for it to make a difference. In fact, just making small changes to how you practice listening can lead to huge improvements in your fluency.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that listening helps you in all areas of learning English. If you're listening to English in movies, music, podcasts, or even conversations, you're picking up so much more than you realize. You're learning new words, phrases, expressions, and getting used to how things sound in real life.
Right. And don't worry, whether you're an elementary or intermediate learner, this podcast is going to be really useful. We'll be sharing tips and ideas that will be easy for everyone to try, even if you're just starting out. And remember, we're here to make the process fun and interactive.
And of course, we want to take a moment to thank all of you who are listening to this podcast. We truly appreciate you being here with us today. You're already taking an amazing step toward improving your English, and we're so happy to be a part of that journey.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope that by the end of this podcast, you'll have some exciting new ideas to help you improve your listening skills and boost your English fluency. Let's get started.
So, Agnes, let's jump right in. Why do you think listening is so important for improving English fluency? Why should learners really focus on this?
Well, Jasper, when you listen carefully to English being spoken, you start to understand how sentences are structured, how words are pronounced, and how people use language in everyday situations. This is something that textbooks often don't teach you because they focus more on rules and vocabulary. Listening, on the other hand, helps you understand how to use the language, not just what the language is. It helps you build a connection between the words you know and how to use them naturally in conversations.
That's such a good point. It's not just about learning more vocabulary or grammar. It's about learning how to use the vocabulary and grammar you already know. And when you get used to hearing words and phrases in context, it makes it much easier to use them when speaking.
Exactly. And something else to keep in mind is that English has a lot of sounds and patterns that might not exist in your native language. For example, you might find it hard to understand fast speech or certain accents. But the more you listen to different types of English, the more familiar these sounds will become, and soon, They won't sound so difficult anymore.
Right. And one great way to improve your listening is by regularly listening to content in English. But don't just listen passively. Try to actively listen, focusing on specific things like the pronunciation of words or the structure of sentences. And remember, it doesn't always have to be formal or educational content. You can listen to songs, podcasts, TV shows, or even YouTube videos, whatever interests you the most.
I agree. Listening to something you enjoy makes the process feel so much more natural. And let's not forget that repetition is key. When you listen to the same content multiple times, you'll start to notice things you missed the first time. You'll catch new words or phrases and understand them better, which will directly improve your speaking as well.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't realize that listening is also a fantastic way to improve your pronunciation. When you hear how native speakers say certain words or phrases, your brain starts to remember those sounds and patterns, and before you know it, you're speaking more clearly and confidently.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So, if you want to sound more natural in your speaking, start by focusing on listening. It's all connected. And I really think the more you practice, the more confident you'll feel when speaking. And that's the goal, right? To speak English confidently and fluently.
Exactly. And with that in mind, let's talk about some fun ways to practice your listening that can actually help you in the long run. We've got some great tips for you, so stay tuned as we share them.
All right, everyone, let's pick up right where we left off. So, as Jasper was saying, listening is such an important part of becoming fluent in English, and now we're going to dive into some practical and fun ways to actually improve your listening skills. Whether you're just starting or you're at an intermediate level, there's something here for everyone. So, let's get into it. First off, one of the best ways to improve your listening is by listening regularly to English. Now, I know that sounds simple, but the key here is consistency. Try to listen to English every single day, even if it's just for a few minutes. You don't have to spend hours, but the more you expose yourself to the language, the more your brain gets used to hearing it. And trust me, this will make a big difference in how you understand the language and how you start speaking more fluently.
That's so true, Agnes. Just like learning anything, practice makes perfect. Even if you're listening to something that's a little challenging, stick with it. Over time, you'll start picking up more words and understanding the context better. And don't worry if you don't catch everything, that's completely normal. The more you listen, the easier it becomes to understand.
Exactly, Jasper. And here's a fun idea. Choose something you enjoy. Don't just pick any random podcast or audiobook. Pick topics or shows that interest you. This could be anything from a favorite TV show to podcasts about hobbies or even YouTube videos that you're really passionate about. If you enjoy the content, you'll feel more motivated to listen and keep practicing, and it won't feel like a chore.
Another thing you can do is switch on subtitles when you're watching movies or shows in English. This is a great way to follow along with what you're hearing and also see the words in written form. You can even start by watching something with subtitles in your own language first, then switch to English subtitles once you get more comfortable. This will help you link the spoken and written words together. I love that tip, Agnes. Subtitles really help because you get the audio and the text at the same time. It makes it easier to catch words or phrases that you might not have understood just by listening. But here's something important to remember. Try not to rely on subtitles too much. The goal is to eventually understand spoken English without needing them, so challenge yourself little by little to listen without looking at the subtitles. It might be hard at first, but it'll pay off in the long run.
Yes, exactly. And while we're on the topic of watching shows and movies, don't just passively watch them. Active listening is key. Try to focus on specific things while you're listening. For example, pay attention to how the speaker pronounces certain words or how they form sentences. Maybe they're using contractions, like don't instead of do not, or they're speaking in a more relaxed tone. Notice how they stress certain words or how they use intonation to express emotions. This helps you understand the rhythm and flow of the language, which will make your speaking sound more natural, too.
I totally agree. It's all about really being engaged in what you're listening to. One exercise that I've found super helpful for improving listening is shadowing. Shadowing means repeating what you hear as closely as possible, almost like you're copying the speaker. You can do this with podcasts, YouTube videos, or even audiobooks. Listen to a short section, then pause and repeat what you just heard. Try to match the speaker's tone, pronunciation, and rhythm. This practice can help improve your pronunciation and listening skills at the same time.
I love that idea. Shadowing is like practicing speaking and listening at once, and it helps you get comfortable with the natural flow of the language. And if you're finding it a bit too difficult at first, don't worry. Start with short sentences or slower audio and gradually work your way up to longer, faster conversations. The key is to challenge yourself little by little, and you'll start seeing progress before you know it.
Exactly. And another great way to practice listening is by listening to music in English. I know, we all love music, right? Music is an amazing tool for language learners because the lyrics are often full of common phrases and expressions. Plus, listening to your favorite songs over and over helps you remember certain words or phrases, and you can even start singing along. This is a fun way to practice your listening and pronunciation without feeling like you're studying. Just be sure to pay attention to the lyrics. Sometimes, songs can have tricky words, but that's all part of the learning process.
Oh, absolutely. Music is such a fun and natural way to improve your English. And if you're ever curious about the meaning of some lyrics, you can always look them up online and see how the words are used in context. Plus, if you're a fan of a specific artist or band, you might also want to check out interviews or videos where they speak in English. It's another opportunity to hear native speakers in a relaxed, informal setting.
That's a great point, Agnes. And while we're on the topic of different types of listening, let's not forget about listening to podcasts. I mean, we're on one right now, right? Podcasts are an amazing resource for learners because there are so many different topics to choose from. Whether you want to learn about culture, science, or something more personal like travel or lifestyle, you can find a podcast that fits your interests. And the best part is, you can listen while you're doing other things like walking, cooking, or commuting.
Yes, podcasts are so flexible. They let you listen anywhere and anytime, and they often feature real-life conversations, which is great practice for learning natural English. Plus, you can always pause and rewind if you don't understand something. That's something you can't always do in a real conversation. So, feel free to go at your own pace and don't hesitate to listen to the same episode a few times until you feel more comfortable.
I think that's a great tip. And remember, it's not just about listening to the content, it's about actively engaging with it. Try to understand the main idea, the details, and even the emotions behind what's being said. And if you hear a new word or phrase, write it down. This will help you expand your vocabulary and improve both your listening and speaking skills.
Exactly. Learning English is like building a house. Every new word or phrase you learn is like adding a new brick to your foundation. And listening is one of the strongest tools to build that foundation. So, keep listening, keep practicing, and remember that the more you expose yourself to English, the more confident you'll become. You'll be amazed at how much you improve just by taking small steps every day.
Absolutely. And there's one final thing I want to mention before we wrap up this part of the conversation. One of the best ways to track your progress is by challenging yourself with different listening levels. As you improve, try listening to more difficult content. You might not understand everything at first, but with time and practice, you'll start to catch more details and improve your fluency.
Great points, Jasper. Yes, as you were saying, it's all about challenging yourself with different levels of listening. As you get better, you should try to increase the difficulty of the content you're listening to. Don't be afraid to push yourself. It's an important part of growing and improving in any skill. But remember, even if something seems difficult at first, that's okay. It's all part of the learning journey, and as you continue practicing, it'll get easier and easier. Now, something I'd like to highlight is the importance of diversifying your listening sources. We've already touched on things like music, podcasts, TV shows, and movies, but I want to dig a bit deeper into the idea of exposing yourself to a variety of accents and speaking styles. You see, English is spoken in so many different ways around the world. There's American English, British English, Australian English, and so much more. Each of these accents and dialects has its own rhythm, pronunciation, and even vocabulary. And if you limit yourself to just one type of English, you might struggle to understand others when they speak in a different accent.
That's such an important point, Agnes. English isn't just one thing, it's a global language, and people from all over the world speak it in unique ways. One of the best ways to prepare yourself for real-world conversations is to listen to different accents and varieties of English. It may be challenging at first, but the more you expose yourself to these different accents, the more comfortable you'll become with understanding them. For example, an American speaker might say schedule differently than a British speaker. The pronunciation is different, but both are correct in their own context. And if you only listen to one version, it can be hard to adjust when you encounter a different accent. But by mixing things up and listening to a variety of accents, you'll be more prepared to understand anyone, no matter where they're from.
Absolutely. And I know sometimes it can feel overwhelming to try and understand every accent right away, but the trick is to not rush the process. It's okay to take your time and gradually expose yourself to different English varieties. Maybe start with listening to something familiar, like a podcast or TV show, but try to find different versions of it. If you're watching a popular show like Friends, for example, try watching it with American accents. Then try watching it with British subtitles or listening to interviews with the actors who have different accents. Little steps like that will help you become more adaptable. Also, remember that context plays a huge role in listening. Even if you don't understand every single word, you can usually figure out the meaning by looking at the context. For instance, if someone is talking about the weather and they mention rain, even if you don't know every word, you can guess that the conversation is about rain. Context helps you fill in the gaps, and this will make it easier to follow the conversation overall. The more you listen in context, the more you will understand naturally.
Yes, and the beauty of listening in context is that you're also learning how to respond to different situations in English. It's like you're training your brain to think in English, rather than translating from your native language. The more you listen and understand the natural flow of conversations, the more you'll be able to respond with confidence and fluency. It's a win-win situation. Another technique I'd love to share with everyone is listening to news in English. Now, I know some people might think news can be a bit dry or formal, but it's actually a great way to improve your listening skills. News broadcasts use clear, standard English, which can help you get used to understanding spoken English in a more formal setting. And if you're someone who likes to stay informed, why not combine learning and staying up to date?
I completely agree. News broadcasts are fantastic for learning because they usually feature standard, clear English, and they can help you get used to understanding different topics. Plus, you can find news broadcasts from many different countries, so you'll get exposure to different accents and vocabularies. And you don't have to listen to an entire news program at once. You can listen to short segments. Even just a 5-minute news update every day will help you improve. Now, let's talk about listening to real conversations. This might sound a bit more difficult at first, but it's incredibly helpful. You can practice by listening to interviews, conversations on YouTube, or even TED Talks. Listening to people speaking naturally, without scripts, is such a great way to improve your listening because it simulates the type of conversations you'll have in the real world. And what's even better is that real conversations often include idioms, slang, and expressions that you won't find in textbooks, but are so important for speaking fluently.
You're so right, Agnes. Real conversations will introduce you to a whole new level of language. People don't always speak in full sentences or use perfect grammar in real life. They use contractions, slang, and sometimes speak quickly or interrupt each other. Getting used to this is key to becoming fluent. And TED Talks, for example, are fantastic because they not only improve your listening, but they often come with transcripts that you can read afterward. You can listen to the speech, then check the transcript to see how well you understood everything. It's a great way to improve your comprehension.
Another important thing to remember when you're listening to real-life conversations is to focus on specific skills. For example, you can try focusing on understanding the main idea of what someone is saying, then move on to picking out more details later. Don't feel like you need to understand every word. Just try to get the overall meaning. Over time, you'll start understanding more and more, and that's when you'll really start to see your fluency improve.
Exactly, Agnes. And something else I'd recommend is using interactive listening activities. There are many resources online, like apps and websites, where you can listen to short conversations and then answer questions based on what you heard. This type of listening practice is great for testing your understanding in a more structured way. You can even replay sections to make sure you catch every detail. It's a fun and effective way to keep track of your progress.
That's such a great suggestion, Jasper. And I think the key takeaway here is that practice, consistency, and variety are your best friends when it comes to improving your listening skills. By exposing yourself to different accents, topics, and listening formats, you're training your brain to understand English in all sorts of real-world situations. Over time, this will not only help you improve your listening, but it'll also make you feel more confident when it's time to speak. So, don't be afraid to challenge yourself, mix things up, and remember, it's all part of the process. Your fluency will grow little by little, and every bit of progress counts.
I love everything you said, Agnes. It really boils down to staying curious and engaged with the language. The more you enjoy the process, the easier it will be. And remember, listening isn't just about hearing words, it's about understanding meaning, feeling the flow of the language, and connecting with what's being said. Keep practicing, and before you know it, you'll be speaking English more fluently than ever.